Hey, what's going on, guys? As we leave Wano, I want to have a discussion talking about a group of characters who, while relatively unpopular, played a major role in the story arc. Of course, I'm talking about the samurai that saved the late Kozuki Oden, the Nine Red Scabbards. Now, like most, I've never been a huge fan of the Scabbards, but they do have some pretty cool traits about them. From the unique and interesting designs to the relatively well-implemented build-up, the Nine Red Scabbards have some fascinating things presented with them. With that, today I'm going to rank these characters from weakest to strongest in regards to overall strength, versatility, intelligence, and more. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button, and if you really like me, subscribe as well. Also follow me on my social media pages and join the Discord. And with that, let's get to it. Many would consider the Scabbards to be an absolute disappointment, and there's no Scabbard that represents this more than the ninja of the group, Rizo of the Mist. Now, I think we can all admit that, like the characters of One Piece, Rizo was not what we expected when we heard a ninja was going to be added to the cast. From his gigantic head and short and stout body, to his ridiculous facial expressions and voice, Rizo definitely fits the joking and cartoony features of a One Piece character. This doesn't really speak to his strength and abilities, so let's get to that right now. Now, Rizo does have a couple feats under his belt that are relatively impressive. He defeated the leader of the Oniwa Banshu, Fukurokujo, in a battle of durability, surviving being lit on fire before his opponent succumbed to said flames. While it's unclear exactly how powerful Fukurokujo is, it's not a bad feat to survive being burnt alive for a significant period, even though it's probably not at the level of Oden's feat of being boiled in oil for over an hour? Or less than an hour? I don't remember exactly. What's easily Rizo's best feat, however, is his capturing of Kaido's fire breath using his Maki Maki no Jutsu and redirecting the attack at the Yonko, successfully damaging him. This isn't incredibly significant, however, as every Scabbard damaged Kaido during their fight with the Yonko, and every other member damaged him with their own strength, while Rizo redirected Kaido's attack. Still, it's impressive, but I don't think it's enough for me to view Rizo higher than the bottom spot. Now, number 8 goes to a character I have absolutely no love for, and that's the character who was secretly working against the Scabbards, Evening Shower Kurozumi Kanjiro. Now, Kanjiro is definitely an underhanded fighter, fitting for a character who was acting as a covert spy for the Kurozumi family against Oden's retainers. What was clearly his most devious act was when he created an identical clone of Oden and showed it to the Scabbards, something leaving the members shocked and confused. However, when Ashura Doji saw through the facade and attacked the fake Oden, he was killed due to the explosives attached to the clone. While Kanjiro is definitely a trickster, that is why I think he doesn't reach the level of some of the more powerful Scabbards. We see that when in a true blue one-on-one fight, he's defeated relatively easily against characters such as Kiku Nojo and Kinemon. Even when he got the upper hand on Kiku, this is only due to the fact that he talked about Oden taking in her and Izo as children, causing the Scabbards to hesitate for a moment, making her fall victim to a stab directly in the chest. It's clear Kanjiro uses underhanded tactics to get the upper hand in any fight he's in, making believe he's one of the weakest members of the Nine Red Scabbards. Now, number 7 is a character I would love to put a little higher, as she is definitely one of my favorite Scabbards, but it's the only woman of the Nine Red Scabbards with one of the best epithets in the entire series, Kiku Nojo of the Lingering Snow. Now, Kiku is absolutely not weak by any means, as she pretty easily destroyed Kanjiro and was capable of dealing decent damage to Kaido with a wind slash from her blade. However, I don't think there's much I could say to justify her being above any of the higher characters on this list, as the statements and roles they play in the story, and even the feats they have seemed to display, are of a greater level of strength. As I mentioned prior, while she was distracted by Kanjiro's trickery, Kiku did get pierced in the chest by the traitor, which doesn't exactly help her case. Additionally, Kiku most likely suffered the most damage in the battle against Kaido, as her arm was sliced off in an absolutely gruesome scene. This is especially bad as Kiku was the only one wearing significant armor, and for her to be the only one to receive damage of that level seems to be an anti-feat in my opinion. Still, Kiku took the hit like a champ, having Kinemon cauterize the wound, with her standing back up with a smile on her face, as if nothing happened. There's not much to say about Kiku, as like most of the Scabbards, she doesn't do an extreme amount in the series. However, I am more than comfortable putting her over the likes of Rizo and Kanjiro. Now, as I was saying prior, I would have loved to put this character below Kiku. However, at the number 6 spot, I had the leader of the Nine Red Scabbards, Foxfire Kinemon. Looking back, Kinemon is a character who deserves more credit, with pretty crazy feats coming from as long ago as Punk Hazard. The character was tanking hits to the head from Sanji of all people, and his torso alone was able to match Brook in swordsmanship. As his signature Foxfire style, he cut through Smiley and its resulting explosions. Additionally, with his power, he cut through Kaido's Bolo Breath, one of the most powerful fire-based attacks in the entire series. Debatably the most powerful attack of the entire series? There's some other attacks, but it's one of for sure. His skills were recognized by Hyogoro the Flower, and he was even capable of dueling with Ashura Doji in a sparring session, Ashura being who I consider to be one of the most powerful Scabbards. He also destroyed Kanjiro at a similar level to Kiku, which is only a plus in his favor. What I consider as Kinemon's best feat is the fact that he is presented alongside 3 of the most powerful Scabbards. emulating Oden's two-sworded style, dealing with what was probably the most significant damage Kaido received from Oden's retainers. In my opinion, Kinemon is generally pretty close in strength to a character such as Kiku, however the reason I have him above Kiku is his role in the series. As the leader of the Scabbards, while it's clear he didn't receive the position based entirely on strength, it's still relevant to note that he has a narrative edge over Kiku and is presented as such. One of the clearest examples of this being how Kiku ended up falling to Kanjiro, but Kinemon picked up the pieces and defeated his rival. At the end of the day, Kinemon is most likely an underrated character, however, I believe the statements and feats regarding some of the more powerful members on this list trump the likes of Kinemon. Alright, at number 5 we're beginning to talk about what I would consider to be the top tiers of the Scabbards, and it begins with the Japanese puffer fishman, the sumo wrestler, Kawamatsu the Kappa. I'm pretty conflicted with a character like Kawamatsu, as I really do like his introduction and his role in the story with Hiyori, but I've never been a huge fan of its design. In regards to strength, Kawamatsu is definitely a weird one, as he has the statements to easily be one of the most powerful Scabbards, however combat-wise, he doesn't do a whole lot in the series, even when compared to his fellow samurai. He's one of the few Scabbards listed by Kinemon as a significant asset to the samurai's side, as he would be worth 100 men in battle. Not only that, but he's also listed as the most powerful sumo wrestler in all of Wano, which we don't really know how this affects it, because we don't know the real strength of most other sumo wrestlers in Wano, but still, it's a feat, you know, something. Even considering he was in prison in Udon for 13 years, Rizo still claimed that Kawamatsu's power has not waned. Like the rest of the Scabbards besides Kanjiro, the man dealt damage to the seemingly invincible Kaido and also pushed him off his feet. There's not much more to say about Kawamatsu in relation to his power, so for now, middle of the road seems absolutely fair for this character. Alright, this is most likely my favorite of the 9 Red Scabbards, but number 4 goes to one of the only Scabbards that died during Wano, and that's Ashura Doji. To be honest, I really wanted to put Ashura Doji at the number 3 spot, as I do think him and said spot are most likely relative. However, there are a couple of reasons to have him lower than number 3 spot, which I will get to when we talk about him. In regards to Ashura Doji, there's a plethora of positive things I could say about the character. He fought equally, and I would say even displayed better strength than Jack, slashing the All-Star across the chest, completely speed blitzing him before Jack had a chance to react. This obviously already puts him at Yonko Commander level in my opinion, meaning he would most likely put up a decent fight against characters like Doffy and Cracker, characters who forced Luffy to use Gear 4th for an extended period of time. Additionally, he was also able to spar evenly with Inuarashi, a character I would consider to be one of the most powerful Scabbards. As a young man, Ashura was considered the most dangerous criminal of Kuri, and to put a stop to him was Kozuki Oden himself. The two fought for an entire day before Ashura eventually fell, and Oden also was visually beaten up. Considering who Oden is, this is absolutely insane, as Oden was a character who clashed with the likes of Whitebeard and Kaido. Speaking of Kaido, the Yonko himself chose not to kill Ashura Doji, as he wanted to recruit the samurai to his crew, only further displaying Ashura's insane strength. The last point I want to make in regards to Ashura's insane overall ability comes from moments before the samurai dies. He's the only one of the Scabbards who noticed that Kanjiro's fake Oden was indeed not real, and when this clone revealed they were holding explosives under their clothes, Ashura immediately tackled the fake Oden out of the way of his allies, sacrificing himself by taking the brunt of all the explosions. All in all, Ashura Doji is an absolute legend who could definitely possibly be higher up on this list. However, for now, I believe the top 4 is fair for my favorite Scabbard. Now number 3 goes to a character who played one of the most relevant roles out of the Scabbards in Wano. That's a man who disguised himself as Yakuza boss Kyoshiro, but is actually one of the 9 Red Scabbards, Dendro. Now one could argue that Dendro is similar to a character like Kawamatsu, where he has multiple statements about him that seemingly puts him at a high level, but he doesn't do as much as a character such as Ashura Doji, for example. The difference is that not only are Dendro's statements more significant, but he also has actual feats to name that aren't the same as every other Scabbard. For one, he is capable of clashing pretty evenly with the likes of a two-sworded Zoro. Whether you think Zoro was a Yonko Commander level at this point or not, I'd argue this feat is decently impressive. He also easily subdued Sasaki, someone who I'd consider to be a mid-tier Tobiropo member. Really though, the reason I have him above the likes of Ashura Doji comes from a Vifor card mention, stating that Dendro has the greatest mastery of swordsmanship amongst the 9 Red Scabbards. While this doesn't exactly mean strength, both Dendro and Ashura Doji fight alongside each other enough for me to consider them to be relative to one another, and Dendro having the statement gives him a plus that Ashura just doesn't have. Additionally, you could definitely make an argument that for samurai in particular, swordsmanship is most likely their most valuable asset, so the fact that Dendro contains the best is pretty significant. He's also incredibly intelligent and tactical, as he disguised himself well enough that he, one of Oden's retainers, was trusted enough to be Orochi's most loyal subordinate. All the while, he was still capable of providing food in the shadows to the poorest parts of Wano. Now, if you want to have Ashura Doji over Dendro, considering his feats versus Oden, or the fact that he was the one who saved the rest of the Scabbards, that's completely fine. However, after giving everything I've mentioned, I think Dendro slightly takes the edge in his fight, making him the number 3 spot in my opinion.
Rizo 殿はご無事です。
Now number 1 should be clear at this point, but it's a tie between the 2 rulers of the Mokumo Dukedom, the 2 minks of the Red Scabbards, Inuarashi and Nekomamushi. As a side note, this is the first time I've ever had a tie on the channel, and I think it's absolutely fitting for the 2 mink leaders. Characters like Inuarashi were clashing evenly with Ashura Doji, and both mink leaders survived being tortured for an entire day while also being exposed to Jack's Koro gas. Even then, they still didn't give up information on Rizo. Now let's talk about the obvious reason the 2 mink leaders have taken the number 1 spot, and it comes from one ability, the Sulong form. Normally, I'd consider these 2 in-between characters like Kamasu and Ashura Doji, however, their Sulong forms bring them to another level. Using it greatly increases all their stats a metric fuck-ton. Even a character like Carrot went from being moderately strong to easily debilitating a fleet of Big Mom's tart ships, something known as a major component of Big Mom's pirate fleet. When the 2 mink leaders use this transformation, they similarly did decent damage to Kaido. What puts them at a significant level over the other Scabbards is that even after being defeated by Kaido, the 2 went on to each fight 2 Yonko Commander level characters, Jack and Perospero. It seems that the 2 were able to easily defeat the 2 Commander level characters when in their Sulong form, which considering the Kaido fight they just went through, is easily the most impressive thing any of the Scabbards did. There's not much more to say, as I think it was clear these 2 would be at the top when considering the Sulong form, so I'll leave it at this. Even if the 2 are most likely equal, if I had to pick one I would consider the strongest Scabbard, I would give it to the dog mink Inuarashi. He fought Jack, who's clearly more powerful than Perospero, and we see him clashing evenly with characters like Ashura Doji even in his base form. With that, I still think these 2 share the number 1 spot, and I wouldn't be surprised if either of them could give characters such as Queen or Smoothie a run for their money in a 1v1 fight.